Now, I know this is a very hot topic amongst the Persona community for some strange reason, but we need to talk about Persona 4 and remakes for the Persona series. Now, I know this is a very hot topic amongst the Persona community for some strange reason, but we need to talk about Persona 4 and remakes. Now look, where I stand on the Persona 4 remake little, I guess, podium where I stand there, personally, I don't mind if that game gets a remake. That's just me. If that game is a remake, I'm not gonna be mad. Honestly, I fully expect it considering how well that game did. I would be shocked if Atlus just for whatever reason decided that they never wanted to remake it. But where I also stand, I believe that before we get any other remakes for any other Persona games, 1 and 2 needs the remakes most. And that's bar none. Now, of course, there's gonna be people that disagree, and I think that's fine. Everybody should have their own opinion. I don't want everybody to just blindly agree with me at all. But I feel like Persona 1 and 2, not even I feel like, I think this is just an objective fact. Persona 1 and 2 are some of the most disregarded games in the series. Probably, let me not say in the entirety of Shin Megami Tensei because that's a whole other thing there. At this point in time, Persona 1 and 2 rarely gets any kind of recognition by Atlus or the fans, with it being a very small majority or minority of people, I should say, that even talk about the game to this day. Just to be fair to the people that want the Persona 4 remake, of course, Persona 4 as an IP would benefit from receiving a remake. That goes without saying, that's a given. But I just feel like personally, Persona 1 and 2, they're already limited to like the PlayStation 1, PSP, or if you're not playing on either of those, emulate. So it's already a hard game to come across by traditional standards. Now you take that and you combine that with the fact that the game, in my opinion, is not very fun to play. I played Persona 2, and I will completely admit I watched the playthrough Persona 1 because I just didn't want to play that shit. I will completely admit that. I played Persona 2 with Innocent Sin, and at the time of recording this video, I haven't finished Eternal Punishment. And I know that like most people say that that's the better of the two in that series. I'll get to it eventually. But I think I can still say my opinion on Persona 2, at least in Innocent Sin. The game is not fun. It's really just not fun. It's very dated. The combat is very slow paced. And I know it's a turn-based RPG. And obviously it's before Persona 3 completely reinvented the gameplay of the series. But I've played other turn-based RPGs that didn't feel that dissatisfying to play. That game, these games in general, they need remake. Because there is stories there with these games that are very high quality. Like Persona 1's story is pretty solid. You know, they got some good character interactions over there. And Persona 2, once I get through Eternal Punishment, I'll have more of an opinion on it. But I could see the vision with Innocent Sin. It was hard to see through that vision when it's clouded by boring gameplay and uninteresting like map puzzles that quite frankly I just didn't enjoy going through. And again, that's not to say that I don't enjoy map puzzles in games at all or anything like that, or my gameplay needs to be just like Persona or its ass. It's not that. It's just, if you're going to have these things, they need to be more fun and interactive. At least for me, more engaging. I wasn't feeling like whenever I was going through those games that they were very engaging or fun to go through. And therefore, I didn't enjoy my experience with Innocent Sin. Another thing that we need to consider whenever we're talking about the Persona 4 versus like Persona 1 and 2 remake conversation is that according to a poll held by Atlus, Persona 2 was actually tied with Persona 3 in the games that need to get remade. So the demand for a Persona 2 remake at least is much higher than the demand for a Persona 4 remake, which, hey, again, like I said, I'm all for it. That's honestly the ideal occasion for me, I think, like, because just to reiterate what I was saying before, Persona 1 and 2 are, it's not that the games are too old for me, because I don't have a problem playing old games. The problem is they're dated in the gameplay mechanics that they do have. Like, prime example, I can go back and I can still enjoy playing Earthbound because that game felt fun to play. It was very satisfying. Persona 2, at least from my experience and from my experience of watching somebody else play Persona 1, them games are not fun to play for me. I must clarify, for me, if you enjoy the old versions of Persona 1 and 2, that's completely okay. Honestly, more power to you. I'm jealous of you. I wish I could enjoy those games as much as y'all did gameplay wise, but that's just not how I see it. And I just feel like being able to experience these stories for the first time in modern graphics, actually scratch that, in 3D, because again, those games were stuck to PS1 and PSP. So they didn't get a proper like 3D graphical adaptation or anything. I feel like those games would really do well in that kind of environment. And Persona 4, just go back to that game. I feel like Persona 4 and Golden still hold up extremely well by Persona standards and by JRPG standards. Like, sure, the models can look a little derpy in the face, like, obviously the facial structures of the models aren't animated, so like you'll see them moving their bodies and stuff, you'll see the portrait, but you look at the models, they're not actually speaking. That's fine, you know, it is what it is. It's a quirk of the PS2 era, stuff like that. But I still feel like that's a game that can be enjoyed without it needing to be in like the modern Unreal Engine 5. That game is completely playable, and it's not dated gameplay wise for it to be like, oh, I'm not playing this because it's too slow and it's too boring and it's not satisfying to play. No, the game gameplay wise is still really good. But one thing that I would say they do need to change, if they ever did remake that game, fix the AI tactics, man, because I don't see how it got worse from Persona 3 to 4. I don't really know what happened. Obviously I didn't work at Atlus, but I don't understand how it got worse. But if they remake it, it needs to be better. Another reason why I believe Persona 1 and 2 should get the remake over 4 is because if they remake Persona 1 and 2, it's gonna be much easier for them to be able to reuse assets to be able to just make both at the same time and release both at the same time. Because in case y'all didn't know, Persona 2 is, at the time of recording and at the time of the series, that's the only game in the series that's like a direct sequel to one of the Persona games. That's not like a spin-off or anything like that. Because like you can play Persona 2 without playing Persona 1, but it's much more connected to each other than Persona 3 through 5 are to each other. So I feel like it would just make the most sense for the developers to remake those games, because they're not going to really have to make as many areas completely from the ground up, because they can just make what's the school in Persona 1 called? I know the Persona 2 school is Seven Sisters. I can't remember. Saint Hermelin? I think that's the school for Persona 1. If I'm wrong, I'll just edit it in post. I'll put it on screen. Like they can just take Saint Hermelin and then just rearrange the school stuff to where it ends up just being Seven Sisters, so they're not having to completely make that environment from the ground up. And then even like the mall areas, they can easily reuse that stuff. Like overall, I just feel like it would make more sense from a game development standpoint to do those games first instead of doing Persona 4 Rewind, as the community has coined it, because you can just reutilize more assets much easier, I feel. And I'm gonna just throw this out there, since we're getting the answer too in a few days. Not gonna lie to y'all, if we get a Persona 4 remake, honestly, any of these remakes, I'm gonna just keep it a buck. I will be kind of afraid for what they do musically, because with how Reload and some of its remixes have been coming out, they've either been misses for the most part, or a few diamonds in the rough. Oh my god, Changing Seasons Reload is peak, but then you got the new version of 331 that just came out, and it's just depressing, bro. They butchered one of my favorite Persona OSTs so badly. I don't even understand how it's possible for them to have messed it up this bad. Like, listen to this. Are we serious? How did they do that? What did they do to the high-pitched little... Man, I don't even want to talk about it because I'm gonna just get mad. I'd be worried about what they would do for the music. I'm not gonna say that they can't produce good music at all, because that's not true. I just feel like if it comes down to them having to make original music for the games, sure, I think I would prefer that, because these remixes of the old OST that they did for Reload, at least, were just not good for the most part. Like, I would say overall, it's probably a miss. It's probably a miss. Definitely in comparison to the original, it's a miss, which it really sucks to say that, but it is what it is. But to really answer the question that's in the title of this video, probably, I do think Persona 4 at some point, keywords at some point, should get a remake, because who wouldn't want to see Persona 4 and their characters all in a new gameplay engine? I think everybody would like to see that at some point. It's just a matter of priorities, I feel. Like, Persona 4 it literally just got re-released onto PlayStation 5 for Xbox Series and the One consoles and Nintendo Switch. They just ported those games over. So realistically, it also wouldn't make much sense for that to be the next remake, because those games just came out on consoles like last year or the year before, one of those. So I do feel like Persona 4, again, some point should get the remake, just not right now. I just don't think that right now would even make sense. In conclusion, I personally am of the belief that honestly both games should get a remake. I would love for Persona 1 and 2 to get a remake. And I would also love if Persona 4 got a remake. So who am I to complain about receiving more Persona content? I love those games. So having more Persona to play that I'm not gonna want to, you know, blow my brains out over, I'm not gonna complain about that. I'll take that any day of the week. But if we're talking about prioritizing these games and not putting too much of an unnecessary workload on whatever developers Atlus outsources to make these games, then I feel like Persona 1 and 2 should be the game that gets prioritized. That's just me. But we also need to remember too, like, Persona 6 is a thing. We don't have to have our conversations always come back to remaking these games. Like, we have a brand new entry in the series that, while it hasn't been announced at the time of this video, we already know it's being worked on. We already know it's in development, and we're probably gonna get an announcement for it sooner than later. So I'm gonna keep my hope out for like a Persona 1 and 2 remake, and I'm gonna keep my hopes out for Persona 6 getting its remake, or not remake. I'm gonna keep my hopes out for Persona 6 getting announced, and I'm gonna just keep it trucking. So appreciate y'all for coming out and watching the video. If you enjoyed, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm gonna go ahead and catch y'all later. Peace.